This poem shall speak of the wretched sea that washed ships to these shores, of mothers crying for their young swallowed up by the sea. This poem shall say nothing new. This poem shall speak of time, time unlimited, time undefined. This poem shall call names, names like Lumumba, Kenyatta, Nkrumah, Hannibal, Akhenaton, Malcolm, Garvey, Haile Selassie. This poem is vexed about apartheid, racism, fascism, the Ku Klux Klan, riots in Brixton, Atlanta, Jim Jones. This poem is revolting against first world, second world, third world, division, man-made decision. This poem is like all the rest. This poem will not be amongst great literary works, will not be recited by poetry enthusiasts. It will not be quoted by politicians nor men of religion. This poem is knives, guns, bombs, blazing for freedom. Yes, this poem is a drum, Ashanti, Mama, Igbo, Yoruba, Nyabingi warriors, Yohuru Yohuru, Yohuru Namibia, Yohuru Soweto, Yohuru Africa. This poem will not change things. This poem needs to be changed. This poem is a rebirth of a people, a rising, awakening, understanding. This poem speak, his speaking, have spoken. This poem shall continue even when poets have stopped writing. This poem shall survive you, me. It shall linger in history, in your mind, in time, forever. This poem is time, only time will tell. This poem is still not written. This poem has no poet. This poem is just a part of the story. His story, her story, her story. The story is still untold. This poem is now ringing, talking, irritating, making you want to stop it. But this poem will not stop. This poem is long, cannot be short. This poem cannot be tamed, cannot be blamed. The story is still not told about this poem. This poem is old, new. This poem was copied from the Bible, your prayer book, Playboy magazines, the New York Times, Reader's Digest, the CIA files, the KGB files. This poem is no secret. This poem shall be called boring, stupid, senseless. This poem is watching you trying to make sense from this poem. This poem is fucking up your brains, making you want to stop listening to this poem. But you shall not stop listening to this poem. You need to know what will be said next in this poem. This poem shall disappoint you because this poem is to be continued in your mind, in your mind, in your mind.
History is an interesting one for me. Your Black History being in October, and in Jamaica ours is patterned of the system in the United States, which has us looking at this in February. And interestingly, our Black History Month in February in Jamaica is dominated by the celebration of reggae and Bob Marley, who's born in February. And I would say likewise, our turn to October here is considered Heritage Month, which is a similar kind of resonance to what it is that is being celebrated today. And that month is dominated by celebrations of Peter Tosh. So I want to frame that as an important context because my work is indeed Rastafari. That is my expertise. As was said in the introduction, I am a senior lecturer in the Institute of Caribbean Studies, where I am responsible for teaching courses on Rastafari culture as well as Afro-Caribbean religious retentions. So in speaking to you today, necessarily Rastafari is a critical, focal aspect of my whole philosophical orientation and how this conversation may unfold. I want to also say that COVID-19 is perhaps somewhat of a trumpet call for all of us, and particularly within the Afro-Caribbean, the African diaspora generally. We've seen the emergence of Black Lives Matter as our own pandemic of urgency, something for us to pay serious attention to as a public health crisis in some instances. So this is a good continuation of important conversations that were amplified during this period of COVID-19. The online context has some good and bad in it. The good is that we can join you somewhat easily from almost anywhere. The bad is that we don't get the opportunity to meet face to face and to really engage in the important interpersonal networking, which I think is critical to our community's advancement generally. Just as a bit of background, coming into this space was a bit of a learning for me. So I had to think about my audience, and I had to also accept the fact that I don't necessarily know much about my audience, but I have some ideas as to what that might look like based on my experience with other so-called minorities, especially those in the England side of things. But that knowledge of who you are or who you might be, I'm going to suppose comes within the general context that we are familiar in the Caribbean. So there are some who have, based on heritage, taken up that claim that might be offered to them, some based on ambition to do further studies, some based on opportunities for work, some informal, trying to stabilize and become mainstream. A range of people possibly exist among you, and also a range of potential educational levels, skills levels, etc., also exist in this space. One of the important things that I couldn't come to this space and not share with you is the fact that there is at least 85% attrition of qualified tertiary graduates from the Caribbean region. And what I'm saying is that between 1965 and 2005, 85% of those who achieved tertiary qualifications from countries like Jamaica permanently left those places to make their homes in largely the United Kingdom, North America, and Canada. So in a real sense, Caribbean taxpayers are funding the social, cultural, economic development of certain spaces by this brain drain, this loss of trained individuals. And this must be clearly linked to our perpetual status of underdevelopment and hardship that people in these regions experience based on the fact that the best trained persons choose to make their homes outside of the region. This, I'm imagining, is also a space with such individuals who have been trained and have chosen to make their lives elsewhere, outside of the regions that they have had their training. Where Ireland is concerned, there is a strong link to the Caribbean. I'm not sure if your audiences are aware that based on the plantation culture in the Caribbean, the Irish were among the earliest engaged as indentured laborers throughout the region. And well, perhaps just as a bit of a factoid, the actual word in English, plantation, is borrowed from French to speak to the colonization of Ireland in the 1500s. So in a real sense, the experience, history, the centrality of the Irish connection is quite indelible in the Caribbean as a space and as a historical experience. Throughout the Caribbean, in particular, Jamaica, amazingly, claims up to 25% of its population claiming Irish ancestry. And Irish names are commonplace in Jamaica. Interestingly, persons like Garvey are also identified through that name as perhaps claiming some Irish connection there, as well as Bob Marley, interestingly enough as well. So the Irish connection is a strong one, and therefore the space that you inhabit is of great historical significance. In Barbados, interestingly enough, the Irish remnants that are there are uniquely among the poorest white minority that exists in the Caribbean. Many of them are completely indigent, borderline living standards. They're called red legs and inhabit some of the worst squalors in Barbados, which is a great irony in the Caribbean for light-skinned people or any kind of minority at all. So the Caribbean does have very much strong links with Ireland. In fact, there's a common practice in Jamaica to call the seaweed which we consume as a drink Irish moss. And that is linked to that connected usage that was brought through the Irish settlers in the Jamaican space. So woven into our very fabric there is a consciousness that is linked to Ireland. Marcus Garvey, in fact, was consistently in solidarity to the Irish cause in relation to the British colonial state, so to speak, and used his platform to share that solidarity consistently. I want to say, based on those conversations then, that who you are and the space that you inhabit shouldn't be considered a strange space, but more so a space that has been anchored through a serious colonial connection that can be embraced and even celebrated as who you are. In a sense, you are claiming a natural heritage that your ancestors have constructed and helped to develop, and therefore your sense of who you are in that space should not be one of ambivalence. An interesting conversation years ago started by Jamaican folklorist Louise Bennett allows us to see ourselves in these spaces for who we really are. And in an excellent poem, she outlines what the engagement of immigrants, so to speak, especially those from the Caribbean, represented as a kind of colonization in reverse. And in that, she really helps us to understand and acknowledge the power of the contribution being brought by these individuals. And just to give you a short line from the poem, she says, "Them a pour out of Jamaica, everybody future plan is to get a big time job and settle in the motherland." she mentions an important word as it relates to plan and how the mother country becomes a kind of escape valve or a real aspiration among the formerly colonized people as a way of serious improvement and a right that they can pursue in achieving betterment, which seems in many instances not available to them in the spaces that they come from. So in a sense, the brain drain that I referred to, that sees as much as 85% of tertiary graduates, is a part of the plan that, interestingly, many individuals see as their outcome, as their future, as the way to transform their lives. I want to speak to this issue of the brain drain in some, just a little more detail, because whereas we are able to track that, yes, X amount of persons have genuinely left the region and are not available to the region, what we are not able to track is the effect on the lives of those who have not left in anticipation of potentially joining their families who have departed. And I think that this is the space that we get what appears in places like Jamaica and across Africa as fractured families, which become now more vulnerable to issues of underachievement based on the fact that there is an absence of parental guiding and directions. In some ways, there was a very interesting documentary about a Jamaican immigrant who, when taken to join his mother at a certain age, he thought that was a lie because he had never heard about her in the Jamaican space, that he had been left in waiting for that moment of being reunited with his family. So there is a space that we have to be sensitive about, which is that void left and that anticipation left in the wake of new lives and new directions taken up in these spaces. But the same poem, as much as I point to the fact that the plan sees migration into the North as an outcome, the same plan acknowledges that there is a role that Jamaicans and migrants generally can play in the leadership and direction of these new spaces that they're inhabiting. The new British Prime Minister is a classic example of, what is being celebrated in India as certainly a moment for national pride as to the power that that office seems to command. The idea then of the community that you are is one that I'm trying to foster as one that is very much complex, and based on that complexity, really requiring the highest levels of organization and systematic approach in ensuring that there is strength derived from these new lives and not more complex problems arising because of these opportunities that develop. There is a whole space occupied in the coming and going between these new lives that has now, it's now a category. If you ask someone, where do you live? They say, I come and go, which is to mean 6 months I will spend in Canada or North America or the UK, and the next 6 months I will spend at home. So that is something that we have seen as one of the expressed, perhaps even aspiration of some of our population based on that. So how you use your location is really what I'm bringing into focus. How do you use that location to maximize your full personhood, who you are and who you represent, not just in your new home spaces, but across the world from which you're gathered. Keep alive that connection to home in a way that recognizes the embassy you potentially hold, the ambassadorial role that you play in this post. And I give you an example of such from the Jamaican community settling in the UK in the 50s and 60s. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church was an aspiration of Jamaicans to have a branch of that church opened in Jamaica. And it is because of the location of individuals who were aware of that, being able to take that representation, not just to the church, but to the Ethiopian embassy, that ultimately, within a decade of that agitation, not only did the emperor visit Jamaica in 1966 to understand the people who were representing this church and to, you know, strengthen Afro-Caribbean linkages, but ultimately to commission that the church be sent to Jamaica as a service to the Ethiopians abroad, as Rastafari perceive themselves. But it is the activism of individuals such as Shaggy Berry, who was among those Jamaican elders who valued and understood the potential diplomacy that could be conducted from that position and sought to represent those conversations consistently. In maximizing the location, in a sense, I think one of the best examples of this would be someone I suspect might be known to your audiences, Rassie McLean, who, being a resident in the United Kingdom, saw that as an opportunity to engage the various archives across the UK in retrieving Ethiopian stolen treasures, liberating them as it was described. And he became known as the Jamaican book liberator, having been arrested ultimately in 1985 for such. None of the books were recovered, estimated to be valued in the millions of pounds. Seymour McLean is an extreme example of that maximized location. And his approach is an interesting one, speaking to the issue of entitlement that I referred to previously. He understood how these treasures arrived in their archives in the United Kingdom. He understood the looting and the, you know, rape and desecration that was caused by the actions that possess these treasures now in archives in the UK. In fact, UK law, as you all know, prohibits the repatriation of many of what is housed in the British Museum. And for me, this is an interesting excuse that is offered when Parliament is about lawmaking, and the very persons who made that law are the persons who would be responsible for making the new laws. But the law is cited in the way that Mortimer Planner talks about polite violence, is cited as a bar to that happening. I raised Seymour McLean and the issue of stolen legacies as an extreme example of a man on a mission with a purpose that he saw his own location being able to assist in achieving. There's another example that I want to share with you, which is a little more personalized as far as how it is that an individual can achieve their ultimate spiritual ambition. And this example comes through another Jamaican who migrated to the United Kingdom in the 1960s, a man called Noel Dyer, who used that location from the United Kingdom very quickly with very limited resources to get into Spain, where he used Spain as another location to cross into the continent of Africa, to begin a year-long journey to take him to his promised land in Ethiopia. So he walks for the better part of 12 months and arrives in Ethiopia with a story that has been well documented and captured. The documentary Return to Shashumani captures that for those who might be interested in that. And in that way, we have the use of a location in a way that we have seen consistently ongoing within Rastafari, which is that many of the early settlers in the UK have claimed that the location provides them not just with access to Africa, but the resources to take into Africa, and variously have championed this movement through small organizations around health and education, around famine issues, water harvesting, and pretty much very active in areas such as Shashumani, Ethiopia, Malawi, regions that were formerly inaccessible to Jamaicans, Rastafari, through their link or connection to Africa, have been able to explore up close and through, cheaper access, the imperative of African development, African repatriation in a serious way. So the access provided in certain spaces can be interpreted variously. And we have seen where it has become a launch pad for our community in particular in engaging and galvanizing a certain approach in Africa specifically. The case of Seymour McLean actually was inspired because of the famine in Ethiopia, and one of the outputs of his activism around liberating books was actually the fact that he was able to create a political energy around the need for a Live Aid intervention concert to raise money for the famine in Ethiopia. So in a sense, his self-entitlement and audacity around the books was not an isolated project, but was also linked to a larger philosophical and spiritual interest in this space. I want to presume that these people who have chosen their new homes abroad from the places of their origin are creating new families ultimately. And that conversation about how to engage or what it is that your reason for being where you are is therefore, I think, a primary guiding light that people should hold, understanding if their being in these spaces is permanently, and if so, how to best engage and apply themselves to make permanent and quality contributions. I gather that the African Caribbean minority in Northern Ireland is about 3% based on what I've seen. And I find that interesting as a figure because it approximates, if that is correct, the percentage of minority European and non-Africans in Jamaica who are the wealthiest land-holding sector of the population. So I'm troubling this notion of minority in the way that your membership might perceive themselves and their potential future power. You know, to be reminded that some of the most powerful individuals across the world are really operating as minorities in countries. And this is dominant across the Caribbean and Africa still, that we're talking in some instances less than 1% that owns most of the land, that owns most of the productive sector, and that manages the economy, even if they're not the face of the politics of that nation. So a minority is therefore not to be perceived as a space of disempowerment, but one that can really be a great anchor if well managed and well organized. And I sense that Axoni has this kind of potential and vision for itself. I want to offer, in keeping with this minority notion, a reading of Madness that might be useful for your audience. Now, historically, Freddie Hickling, who is a famous Jamaican psychiatrist, argues that it was a certain kind of delusional philosophy that led Europe to leave its home base and say that everything it encountered and planted its flag on was theirs. Indeed, it is on record that an early Native American goes into Europe in chains. And his question in court is, if the Pope that facilitated the division of the world into two, Portugal and Spain, was a madman or drunk because he divided that which wasn't his and now possesses that which has been stolen from people who had been there. But Hickling also offers us another reading of that delusion as one that has been sold to us all, and we all have accepted the framing of the world through white supremacy as one that, you know, we work with. And, you know, the same way I'm saying that British Museum tells you that legally they can't hand back the property is related to that kind of madness. And what Hickling suggests is that we really need to own our madness. And by mad, I'm really talking about the spirit of the reparations movement. I'm talking about our ancestors like Marcus Garvey, you know, Paul Bogle, persons who one might imagine got mad with things as they were and had the audacity to act on that madness, to challenge the things that we see and know as a part of the framing of the world and as things that we need to accept. To this extent, our major challenges I see at a global level still go back to what Marcus Garvey asked us about and questioned us on almost 100 years ago, when he asked, where are our men of big affairs? Where are those persons commanding economics in the world, making decisions about war and peace, making major political moves? When he asked himself that question, his answer was that he needed to build that. I would like to offer that we do have some challenges still. And those challenges relate to the issue of real power at the global level. So as I was saying that, yeah, the issue of real power is a serious thing that we're confronted with at the global level as African Caribbean people, African diasporas. And that sees us confronted with empires of technology, empires of information, empires of wealth. And I'm talking about big companies like the British Broadcasting Corporation or the World Health Organization or the World Trade Organization, NATO, United Nations Security Council, for example, still doesn't have an African country within its decisioning main structure. Issues faced in agencies that decide the economics of many African countries, Caribbean countries, IMF, and the World Bank. All of the major places where financial, medical, technological power exists, even religious power anchored in places like the Vatican, the symbolic power related to the crown. All of these spaces still hold our attention as being in control of our own lives and destinies. But I think that there are some opportunities, particularly provided through spaces like these that we inhabit, these new spaces like in Northern Ireland, educational services, culture, music related strengths. I think that these are contributions that minorities have demonstrated that they can manage and manage at a very high level in terms of not just serving their own communities, but serving the wider new spaces that they have come to inhabit. So in a real sense, then I think a part of what I would urge those of you here to pay attention to is the conversation around reparatory justice, reparations. It's supposedly the buzzword of the 21st century. And we have seen that consistently persons are not just increasing in agitation about the need for restorative justice, but various agencies have been coming out and playing various parts in this conversation. So we have banks and businesses and financial institutions, museums, universities, churches, even philanthropists. The Irish-based philanthropist who owns Digicel, Dennis O'Brien, has recently engaged the Jamaican state in a conversation about partnering to support and strengthen the reparations conversation claim with the UK itself. So we're seeing increasingly that there are various kinds of individuals, not just grassroots African and African-based organizations, as in, you know, those that are colonial people, but we've seen a number of different inputs increasingly voicing the need for reparatory justice. I want to mention in closing an agency I've been working with, which was formerly the London Missionary Society. It's now the Council for World Mission. And at the board level, it has taken a decision about the need for reparations, given its role in cultural genocide, as far as introducing Christian missionizing and what that did to people's self-esteem and their cultural beliefs. A part of their process has been a three-step engagement, where the first step has been to first apologize, then to seek confession as to what it is that has been done, and then the third step is the financial commitments to repair what they perceive they can. Now, in speaking to that process of reparation that I've been exposed to through them, they've begun to open their archives that were previously closed so that you can actually see the atrocities as recorded by their own missionaries. And in this instance, they've identified £10,000 as the starting amount that would have been provided for a reparations conversation. There are other agencies that have made moves. University of Scotland is one that is famously known. And I'm saying, as much as we are attentive to the further support that these agencies bring, we also have to be mindful of how we remain in control of the conversation. And I think this is where many persons are a little curious about partnerships that come from non-Africans in the struggle for reparation. What are the motivations? How is it that this conversation becomes railroaded? An interesting one is the case of the Kenyan reparation claim that the legal firm was based in the UK. And they are the ones that were spearheading this, and they later developed expertise that they were trying to share with Caribbean region people to be re-engaged on that matter. So there are some issues of inclusion and how this serves the bigger project, or if it harms the project. Those things we have to be sensitive to. So we have to begin to retrofit ourselves in closing for a process that is going to be very much dominant for decades to come. Its conversation is just beginning. Two decades ago, when the movement for reparation was agitating itself in Jamaica and leading to what became the National Council on Reparation, the conversation seemed somewhat more Rastafari than national. And I would say in the 15 or so years of visible national engagement, there has been a larger groundswell of understanding and support on the cause. In fact, there are interpretations about reparation now that are scary for some people, where scamming has been described as a kind of reparation by those people who perpetuate it, and by Jamaican cultural music, that some of which has been celebrating it as such. But more importantly, your location provides us with a partner well placed in a context to share in strengthening the representation, especially in those spaces, around the importance of reparatory justice. The line that we are told consistently is that history doesn't fault us because all we did was legal then. and it's unfortunate. Let's move on. And moving on, I think, has to be, importantly, for us to continue to focus on the work of restorative justice in total, and using the UK location as a solidarity ground to link and strengthen the work that is important across the African globe itself. I thank you and give thanks for these words.
Thank you so much, Jahlani. Dr. Jahlanni, thank you so much for that riveting narrative. Before we take any more comments, I'd like to just hand it over to Laurie to introduce Mutabaruka and ask him to please serenade us with some of his knowledge. Allow us to drink from his fountain, so to speak.
Good evening, Mutabaruka. It was insightful, your arrival. We couldn't miss you at all. We heard you quite clearly, and we're delighted to have you speak with us this evening. I think Dr. Jahlani has set the pace for us this evening by talking about reparations, and I've heard you in many conversations with a lot of journalists wanting to ask you questions about how do you feel about reparations and how important is it and what is the significance. And I think with the unfortunate, incidences that have been happening internationally, there's been a lot of debate, I suppose, from a Commonwealth perspective about countries having their own independence and freedom. And there's a lot of insightful questions you posed back to the questions that you were asked. And we're delighted that you can share with us, and we're an audience that appreciates the line of conversation you have. And we would like to hear your words this evening in light of what Dr. Jahlani has just set the pace for. So welcome to you.
All right, the problem with it is that I couldn't get to hear Jahlani until the last moment. So I really don't know what he was saying. I know he was talking about reparation, but to go and make a revision of what he was saying, I don't know if I can do that. So I would have to just start off my perception. And I know a lot of Jahlani's reasoning, so maybe some of the things that I might say, he had already said it. You know, I don't know, but as I say, I wasn't listening to him. I don't want to rewind the record, spin the record, and start over again. And you say, oh, Jahlani said that again. But reparation is something now that we say is on the lips of a whole heap of ones. We talk about from the universities to even some politicians. Even in America, we hear brethren bring it up on CNN. I think it's Lemon, I don't remember his name. Bring it up on CNN, which is very striking, because there was a time when the idea of saying white man pan CNN and them see each other, you never hear it until the brother name where them hold him pan him neck and kill him. Before that, you hardly hear any journalists that say black people, you know, you hear Black Lives Matter, no, I hear it by the TV enough. So that alone send a certain vibration out there to ones and say, but we did I say black people all the while and white people all the while, and it sound like say we did I say something bad when we say it. Then it come now to the Queen death. The Queen death, I think, open up a lot of space for people like me to continue what we were saying about reparation and what it is necessary and what it is needed for reparation. Because since the Queen death, we hear a whole heap of people posting about what them thief, how much them thief, the crown on our head is Indian, the gold on our throne is African. All of these things we hear, well, we never usually hear it before, unless it was some black activists or Rasta, did I say it. Now it come in an international space where people really are checking and say, wow, I never know that, I never know this. So that alone will give us the authority for those of us who have been pushing this reparation to really speak up more. Now, yesterday, you know, ironically, yesterday I had my program on the radio, and I came through this article in the Observer in Jamaica. It says Edinburgh, United Kingdom, the Scottish capital, Edinburgh, publicly apologized on Thursday for its role in slavery and colonialism. The latest UK the latest UK municipal to say sorry for gruesome aspects of Britain's imperial past chambers. All right, it goes on. But what it says is just like what we say, I develop now. We hear about universities in America. We hear about universities in Europe, and also we see where even the Pope was forced now to recognize the role that the church played in the killing of young Native American children. When they send it to him now, they say, look here, this is serious because we actually found the bones of children that was in your seminaries and your this and that, where hundreds of children graves was found on the premises. Him couldn't dodge that. Him couldn't dodge that. So the Native American carried to him and him apologized. The next thing now is to find out what that apology is going to lead to, as it talk about, also you ask for forgiveness, yes, forgiveness. So what? What after that? And this is a argument that is going through right now with everyone now. Okay, we hear someone who apologize. So what you know going to do after that? As a matter of fact, them even go as far as getting so wicked that them say the people who should have, I hear one British journalist saying that it's the African them should apologize because it's them sell them brothers and sisters into slavery. So you can see how cruel and wicked these people is now, that they want to turn the tables and say it's not them, it's at fault. You know, it's like we did phone them from England and say, come down here, so come take some people and carry them, go do what you want with them. They want to absolve themselves from this wicked and gruesome act of chattel slavery. We not going to allow them to do that. And we're going to continue agitating, and any way possible that we can push the thing out there, we're going to do it. But here's the problem with it now. The problem with reparation now. The people them who were fighting for reparation for don't understand what it is all about. The majority of Jamaican people, and I guess the majority of only African people, don't understand when we say Europe must pay reparation, apologize and pay reparation to the victims of that gruesome event. Some of them have said, so who will collect the money? You know, black people are always, them reach our money first. And then if them get the money, them go buy bling. You know, them go buy eyelash files here. Some, you don't know what them go buy with it, but them find themselves buy all these things with it. So them are trying to figure out now, so how much money we are going to get? That is where the majority of Jamaican people stop with it. When we are going to get your money? How much money we are going to get? And them start to spend the money already before them get it. We understand that dilemma where we find ourselves in, and we who know and understand what it's all about must be able to educate the wider populace about what is it when we say reparation, what we really are dealing with. We must be able to go into the crevice and the corner, even by these mediums, to make the people them understand reparation is not necessarily monetary. It's not necessarily monetary, because there's so much things that Europeans have done for the 500 years here that money can't buy it. One heap of things, or the lack of our cultural expression is the main thing, because our culture is what defines we as a people. And now we don't have a cultural expression that truly defines African people, because African people give them culture. Them gone, they are Europeanized, both mentally and physically. And not only that, no, they have what real term use now, Stockholm syndrome, where them start to love them kidnapper and murderer at the expense of their lives and them family life. So you find some black people now we say, we not talk about give up the queen and the king for. If Jamaica, if the king did a rule Jamaica, it would have much better off. These are some ideas we float all over the place. So it's very difficult for you to go to some people and tell them about reparation and them and say, yeah, but you know, see, black people are rule Jamaica and the place will get worse and worse and worse. If the Queen and Britain did a rule Jamaica, they'll get better. How you get a people out of that mindset? And you talk about 500 years of that mindset. And it dig deeper now when these people plant them culture, in our country and in our mind. And that is the basis of them ruling now, that white people don't have to be present to rule and govern politically, socially, and spiritually black people consciousness. And that is where we find ourselves now. We as people who are conscious of what is taking place. How do we get into the minds of our African brethren and sisters in them to make them understand, say, what you're doing, it's not you. All the things them that we see going around us have nothing to do with us. It has something to do with the development of white supremacy, democracy, and all these other ideologies that we get engrafted in and don't understand that it's not we. It's not we. I have a thing where I say, the black woman, you know, people say, why black man give a problem to a black woman and something. And people are saying, why black man should do better than that. You know, even the woman them I say it to. My thing is not black man is black woman problem. It's not black man is black woman problem. You know what is black woman problem? How them look. Because every black woman right now in Jamaica, when I see on the road, them have something named, them want to extend everything for themselves. Everything. Them start extend them ear, them extend them eyelash, them extend them breasts, them extend them bottom, and extend them fingernail. There's an extension thing that is going on that is not we. And how we find ourselves in this dilemma that black woman can't see themselves. The white, the black man, him have some other thinking that even now the gun crime, what we say, afloat all over the Caribbean, including America. The gun crime, we say we adopt that as part of our cultural expression where gun easier to get than ganja. Gun easier to get than ganja. And how we reach this up? Because now when I one like me, you know, a Jahlani come to one and say, you know, Africa where I work, you know, them I say, well, I'm out of the Africa thing, you know, and really and truly, if you check most Jamaican people, they want to go to America. Because them see opportunity there that them don't see in Jamaica. And you can't show them see opportunity in Africa because all them can see on the TV is war, famine, disease. And years them are push that on the TV. So it make our argument look like a little illusion. And we are saying, but dig deep and look how you live. Look how you live. Every 5 years them have election in Jamaica. And some people run up and down all over the place with politician and thing. And when the election done, them conditions of living is the same as what them started. Where is Jesus and the blood of Jesus in all of this? Oh, Jesus never recognized and the blood of Jesus never recognized it. We come across in a field, piece and shit, upon them boat there. Where was the blood of Jesus in that? We reach cross us up. And them rape a mother, them rape a father, them rape children, them. Where's the blood of Jesus in that? Them lynch with boys and girls and children. Where is the blood of Jesus to save me? So if black people look upon themselves now and say, why is it that we continue to make an image piece up in our consciousness, continuously embowel us in the most deviant and devious behaviors that we don't know about, but it become a part of us. And this is the thing where we who are dealing with reparation face now, that how do you get the people them to see themselves and say, this is what is happening. You see the food where you eat, it now have a work out, because you see the disease arise up in the black community them more. You see the gun crime is in the black community, especially in Jamaica we are talking about, and the Caribbean, because most of the black people dominate the population of the Caribbean. Oh, you come tell them about reparation. Because they must see another quick fix. They must see say, all right, we don't have to work again, because we don't work already, but we want to pay. That's why a whole heap of man in Jamaica feel say if him going what them call it, if him general people and get them credit card and all them thing there, he must say if him get money from them old people in America part of them reparation money. That is the mentality in a young people mind. Say them about take away money from people in America now and say this is a part of reparation money. And guess what them do with it? Them go flat it and them go buy the most expensive car and wash them car with champagne and have the most gold ring on them finger, the most girls and all these things. And them say that is reparation money. And then little more police come hold them. And that is the end of that. And seize them house. Some man get involved in a coke, some man get involved in a gun. And them see that as where them sell it, the coke, and when them use them gun and hire out them gun, that money where them spend on that is them reparation money, but how it filtered out into the wider community. That is the job where we have now when we talk about reparation. We have to see how it fit into the mentality of the people them, or if them is there yet. Because not that we have to stop say reparation and thing, but we can run past the people them and say, well, if you know see reparation to come in, me I go and deal it and run left there. Because if one man free and the others not free, no man can truly say that him free. One of my poems said, the freedom of one is dependent on the freedom of all. So when you talk about lift up yourself, you have to lift up, say somebody behind it, so come up the ladder too. You have to help that person. And the only way you can help that person is to educate them, cut them mindset, but tell them, say, them have to go to church every Sunday. And them reparation is in heaven through the blood of Jesus. Because that is how them say them reparation. They go dead and go to heaven. And when you look on the earth today, people always are boast and say, Africa is the richest country, but Africa is the most backward place now. When science and technology are moving advanced nations, the same God, where you see black people are holding on now, white people are let it go. The majority of people in Europe is not very godly. As a matter of fact, them say the majority of people in Norway, Switzerland is atheists. Nearly all of China is atheists. Japan, same way. England, enough atheism. As a matter of fact, the Jews them who call themselves Israeli are atheists. Most Israelis are atheists. And we hold on upon something with them throw away because them greed for oppress and really enslave you and enslave your mind and your consciousness. That you can repatriate your consciousness into something that you didn't know before and then take you out of it and now you bring forward. And you have people who is there now to help you to come forward into your true self. But the people them is lagging behind. And we can't run left them. We can't run left the people them. When you hear some Rasta talk, it's like, yes, let Babylon burn. Babylon burn where? Rasta still not reach the level where Rasta supposed to reach as it relates to white supremacy and colonialism. Because that is what Rasta was started for. Rasta was started for to show you, say, we have a king for ourselves. And we must decide our destiny. Marcus Garvey come show you that confidence in self. If you have no confidence in yourself, you are twice defeated in the race of life. But with confidence, you have won even before you have started. So when we agitate We not agitate for Rasta. We are agitate for African people who find themselves domiciled in these farmer slave plantation islands. And we have to recognize how important it is to recognize how domiciled we are, how docile we are in these places for 500 years. How we will get to that the mindset. We are telling us what, like if some Rasta said, what, when him dead, him have gone Zion. Oh, dead people start, oh, Rasta talk about death and go to Zion. I thought Zion was a real place. In some people says Ethiopia there, some people says Israel there. All right. But Rasta never talk like Christian because him also almost like him get weary at the situation and it's take too long now. So he might find himself start to now integrate back into something when they live for a long time. You know, see, and we are saying reparation must be transformed and translated into a practical reality for the people them to recognize that reparation is for them and us. And I'm not separating into that them and us, but that is how it goes because some of us move forward one step more than the other person. But as we say, we can't let the people them in our education, in our understanding of self, in our spirituality, we have to tread with the people. And most of our heroes and heroines come and show you that. Paul Bogle was not a very poor man. Paul Bogle did have land, but him decided, say, no, them not treat the workers them right. And him lose him life for that. Him lose him life for that. Most of our heroes come and lose them life because not because them couldn't move forward. But them have said, no, just touch one, you have to touch all. And if you have to educate one, all have to be educated. And that is really what is the role and the aspiration that we must find out into reparation. What we want in reparation. Just like when them give everybody who, them say, like the Kenyan, them, the Kikuyu people, them fight under the Mama to get freedom and kill whole heap of white people. During the time of this woman here, were dead the other day. They must exist in during the time, so it's not a long time thing. That's why the British government right now is in problem because the majority of people say they must get rid of the monarchy, it's to outlive its purpose. All of these things where you have to go pay the monarchy, get rid of them because it don't serve no purpose. And all of we who are live now in our age, the only queen we know was Queen Elizabeth. So when we hear about our next king now, we say, but that don't make no sense. And that is what is waking up the people there. That is what is waking up people say, something not right or so. Because we only know the queen. So how this man come and say, my king, what purpose him going to serve? How long him go there? Him can't there as long as the Queen Elizabeth. Him can't there as long. And him have to go put some people in there where it don't serve no purpose to be as African people. So my reparation thing is that education needed more in the community of African people. We have to really decide how we're going to structure and formulate a system of education that can truly connect with the people then. Not just intellectuals and university people and I'm not against university people, but the university people, they must understand freedom role, not just, you know, but get to the people then. Because when I talk to the people, them feel as a Rasta thing. Them feel as a Rasta talk about reparation. In other words, no, the people them who can sit down with leaders and governments and everything, them only talking to these people, and them not getting anywhere now. But after that, when you come back to the people them now, what you going to tell the people them? Because the people them never hear your conversation with the leaders them after decided that, or the universities them that say them about this. The people them not hear that, you know. It's we have to go make the people them know, say, you have some people up there, so we have to do that, and them doing that on behalf of you. It's you that do on behalf of, and me, and all of it that so is African people. Reparation is not just money. We have infrastructures that not working too properly in a different countries, especially in the Caribbean. You know, the education the places of learning. We have to understand how we're going to get rid of the learning where we get now through the church, because most of the school them is run by church and started by church. How we going to get the mindset. Yesterday was something, day before yesterday was something happening in Jamaica where we say a school, one heap of the people them just fall down and start to talk in tongues according to what them say. That is mass hysteria, you know. But Jamaican people don't see that mass hysteria. Them say as some devil thing and the blood of Jesus around this up. That is what you hear everybody has said. Well, those who don't believe in the blood of Jesus, the blood of Jesus around it. You have nothing no blood of Jesus. It has something to do with mass hysteria and the miseducation of African people, especially in the school them that is run, started by the churches. So you can see how deep reparation have to be. It's not just a political thing and apology thing, because we feel good when we read them articles where we hear this a place I apologize, that a place I apologize. So them give the mama 20 million pounds. After that, what? What is the conditions of the mama, the farmer ma uprisers in Kenya now that them get 20 million pounds? Who's investigating that? We as African people who have the road to go down there and find out and figure it out. What are they doing with that reparation money? And what else is needed from them to the crown? Because we understand how the Israeli them run them thing. They want reparation, and also they want things that politically and materially uplift and advance them. We're not crying for these things. We're probably not so much ritual. Black people wake up and talk about, you know, the ancestor, like they want to pray to them ancestor. I am my ancestor. Everybody know what move from Christianity and say what they might find some spirituality in Africa and them thing. Ritual. The ritual never did help when them come to Africa to come wipe you out. If we did have more gun and more mindset, we can't blame them enough, because in them days that is what they did. But we must know, say, the idea of turning to, you know, well, you get to every man and say, I pray to ancestors. Why you pray to ancestors for? Your ancestors, what them are doing, you're supposed to become your ancestor. We don't need no more hero. We don't need no Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey do more. All you have to do, read the philosophy and opinions of Marcus Garvey and try to embed it in the children them and whosoever come, and then implement them thing there. That is what it really need. So when we talk about reparation, it will become like another illusion in the sky like Christianity. And that is where whole heap of people have it as. Whole heap of people. I don't know if Jahlani know. Jahlani is supposed to know. You go there as a normal person. Go there, go to one dance. Go one dance, we dance all like what. I have a conversation. Just in the dance hall, have a conversation with them. He don't know nothing about reparation. Say more time, well, I'm here where you have to tell you know, but right now, you know, man, I have to live, you know. And him have been gone to. I say I have to live. I'm a deal for the next scamming, or I'm going to scam again. Or we have to go across them barrier there, or we have to move towards what is what and what is not. In the whole of the Caribbean. Because the whole away is mentally enslaved in a European philosophy, European ideology, European religion, European idea of eating food, all of the things them that we never used to do, we get involved in it. Now they might tell you about LGBTQRSP, or whatever them call them. And them now force that upon the children them in them school. And if you start to say, no, you don't agree with it, them want to ostracize your country. The whole of the African them in a problem. Because the whole of the African them say them don't involve in that. And America now say them are going to really create a sort of man is against them economy, because them don't want to accept something that is not in them culture. And there's a whole heap of things that we are doing right now that is not in our culture. And if you attack the culture, you're seriously in a problem, because culture is the basis of everything we have to go on. Every discipline, when you go to university, every discipline comes from culture. Culture religion come from culture, politics come from culture, anthropology, archaeology, all of them is culture. And if we lose a cultural base, foundation, what we going to do? Reparation. We're going to take the reparation and do the same thing with them do. And lose it because we're not a long time old money people. Because when them let go the African them on the plantation, at the same land where the plantation owner them have, them let to pan. So them we don't have no land. We don't have no land, you know. Because every land where you say crown land and the boss man back from master land. So back from master land, him let you go pan. And not only let you go pan matter master land, but him give you the name of the owner, of your owner. John Tam. John Tam. John Tam. So two people named John Tam, the owner and the slave named John Tam. So when you let go and you run and you free yourself and you run go out, if you come from Kingston and you run go Westmoreland, and a man say, where your name? And you say John Tam. So, oh, you run from John Tam. You have to send you go back to John Tam because you don't have no land. Land is power. If you don't have no land, you don't have no power. And part of the whole idea of reparation should be the access and the availability of land to the normal person. We're not supposed to have crown land, or what them call it crown land, and then you have government land, and then no government of the land, and I give them friend it. And the black people, them, all over the place, I look land. When you drive on countryside, it's 2 cow and all 10-acre land. You know what food can plant on 10-acre land. We're not supposed to even eat cow in the first place. You know, say, but 10-acre land for 2, 3 cow, and you have that, and me go by your land. Your life will get shot. How you get the land? A thief in land. The Spaniards them will have the land, and the English come thief it from them. As a matter of fact, the Native African them, the African them and the Taino they have the land in Jamaica. And the Spaniards come thief it from them. Then the next thief come and thief it from the Spaniards. Them thief from thief them say God laugh. And we find ourselves like that thieving thing. And now we are trying to find back ourselves. We have to deal with the understanding that reparation must mean land. That is our repatriation evolve into that. Because land is power. And that every war that is fought on earth was fought over land. Even the war now, Ukraine, Russia, is land. When the Irish them and the people that go America, it's land them go to go thief it from the Native American. When Cook go Australia, it's land them go thief it from the people them. When them come in the Caribbean, it's land them thieving. You know, see, anywhere them go, them thief the land. And we know do have no land. Part of the reparation must be land. And if we don't really desire us for the land in Jamaica, let those who want to go to Africa acquire and get land in Africa. And that is what the Rastaman say. The Rastaman say, look at repatriation is connected to reparation. That means that when you repatriate, don't come to show me upon land where me can't do nothing upon. That means start go up and here to me squatter. We're going to that. Legitimate land. The majority of people in Jamaica who live on land don't own the land. Them don't acquire the land through paper and go down at the national this, that, and get it. Them don't get it that way. It's them ancestors depend the land for how much year and them dead. Now you say no, them are standardized the thing, everybody has to go get papers. And when you hear from the show, the people them who own the land dead like Queen Elizabeth. And yet you yourself since a crown land. So she dead, her son come, and then the son come, and them want the land, and them do have nothing to do with the land. A man go pick 1 dozen aki off of the compound of the Governor General land. 1 dozen aki, and them give him 3 months in jail, in prison, because of that. And the Governor General don't even know that part of the land. Me know say him don't know it, because the man they now walk around this. But it depends on land where them claim say is the crown land. So I don't know if I talk too long, but I just say in summary, we have to connect land, education of the people into a perspective that is necessary to make them understand what is reparation, right? And we have to continue to really agitate all the people them who own things illegally. That's what we are saying. Like these people at the university, them where you say them apologize and all them things there. We have to go to them and say, all right, this is where you say you apologize. So tell me what you're going to do now. Because we're not going to take apology. So I don't say, why them apologize to feel good? Like these little idiot people come down from England the other day. And I tell people, we must get on with it, get over. Get over with what? When some of them did still appear, the slave master, the money up to 2015. And no matter we must get over it. And all the people them who did owe money never get over it. Them have to pay them. And we never get nothing. So we have to say, all of these things have to be connected in it. And all of it have to take into consideration. Say, we who know what to do must continue to do it. But we can't leave out the people. Give thanks.
Thank you so much, Muta. Thank you so much for those very powerful words. In Zimbabwe, the country where I am from, we have a word called chimurenga, which is the struggle. And this is what you are saying, that we must continue with the chimurenga. As a child growing up in Zimbabwe, I was inspired very much by your works and the works of many other luminaries within the Pan-African field. So it is an honor for me and a moment of pride to be able to share a conversation with you and Dr. Jahlanni, Niaah. I would hope Jahlanni can hear us and can come back into the conversation, because
I don't see him, you know.
I know he's here. He is here.
He must have gone in a bathroom, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm a brethren, you know. I'm a brethren. I'm a brethren. A personal brethren there.
He is my brethren too. And I met him back home in Zimbabwe through a mutual friend and educator. So I was just saying this to say that this basically encapsulates the spirit of collaborativeness and working together as African people, that we can come together on platforms like this and disseminate information, spread and share messages and inspiration. So thank you both, gentlemen. And once again, my apologies for the mix-up with the timings. That must be the African in me. We believe that any time is tea time, as I'm sure you both have heard in your travel.
Actually, there are Europe where you talk about tea, man. You know, it's a roots if you're there, the time is roots time or ganja time.
True. Well, just to me have a job me want to keep, so I will just refer to tea, but I know.
All right, sir.
I would hope that we can field a few questions and answers in our remaining time. But before we do that, Laurie, can I hand over to you, please, Empress?
Well, I think just listening to both of you, and I want to say thank you, because you've re-emphasized the importance that it's not just the repatriations that we're looking for. It's also about us understanding who we are as a people. You know, the wealth distribution, especially from us knowing who we are, having an understanding through education, and understanding that when we have the money, what are we going to do with it? And I like the questions that you've posed, Mutabaruka, especially for us to all take into consideration that apology is one thing. What else follows the apology? And if we're not even aware ourselves of what we're asking for, then we settle for less. So we truly need to understand ourselves. And thank you both for not only just challenging us, but giving us insight into things that perhaps we take lightly, because we should be aware of ourselves, as you so rightfully pointed out, Dr. Jahlanni, that knowing ourselves and making sure wherever we're placed in the world, we do not lose that identity. It's crucial in our development. Now, I know there are lots of comments. I think we have one question. I think that might have disappeared. Takura, may I come to you and we can go through some of the comments? And if there's some of the comments that people have raised, if you would like to speak, if you just indicate by raising your hand, I'm sure we will not have an issue with you speaking or airing further conversation with both Dr. Jahlani and Mutabaruka, because I'm sure they'll be more than happy to have a conversation further with you.
Thank you. Thank you. I will begin with the comment of Benjamin Kerma, who had quite a lot of comments. So I'll just start with this comment and move on, and then the panelists can comment as they feel free to do so. So Benjamin says, who legalized the injustices of colonialism and the horrific brutality of the transatlantic slave trade? I'm not sure if that's a rhetorical question. I'll move on to the next one. The apologies for atrocities look more like a smooth hand than self-flagellation. And the next reader, again, it's Benjamin commenting, the argument that Africans sold Africans into slavery is neither here nor there. Slavery did not begin with the transatlantic slave trade. However, slaves were always treated as part of a household. The only difference was that a slave was not free. The transatlantic slave trade was the first time in history that human beings were treated as commodities, worse than animals would be treated today. We cannot escape this inhumanity of man to man, the horrific brutality of it all. The worry is that mindsets have not really changed since then. It has been handed down from generation to generation and manifests itself in racism and xenophobia today. Comments from our brother Benjamin. And Javid Richardson says, eradication of the European-based education system that dominates the Western world is the first steps, or else the cycle is just going to keep going. We don't really want money, we want land. No amount of funds can pay for the wickedness over the past 500 years. Every other minority, in inverted commas, received reparations except Black people. Next gen comments, as people, we are not ready for this conversation about reparations until we really know our own culture, value what we have, understand who we were and who we are meant to be. Africa is rich in resources. And Alex said, land is power. Gentlemen and ladies, if you would like to comment on any of those.
Yeah, well, most of what I just read is some things that I just said and really emphasize the idea of land. That every war that I know about that was fought over land. And I don't think African people understand how real estate is the driving force in the economy of the world. You know, why man I look for oil in a people land? Why water is so important on land? And why living space is so important in land. So I would say, even the money is not that, well, it's significant, but not as significant as the acquisition of land. And we, as who's domiciled at this part, must not make them feel, say, Africa is not a place where we should have fight for. Because we see the African leader, them has lost them way in many, many ways, them lose them way. And we who know, say, it can't work that way continuously. We can't keep saying, you know, say, it's we give the world history, Africa, this and that, we give them mathematics. Yeah, that is in the past. African civilization was great, but what it is now is what we must deal with. What are Africans doing now to advance the scientific and cultural base of African people? We can't keep a delving up. Yeah, you know, the Egyptian, this and the Egyptian, that our ancestors, this our ancestors, that. Yes, land. African people must control Africa. The Jamaican people must control the land in Jamaica. The Trinidadian must control the land in Jamaica and all. You see in Haiti now, I don't want to take too long. You see Haiti, them selling this narrative about Haiti, that there's gang taking over the country. It's not no gang taking over the country, you know. It's Asian nationalists. It's nationalists, Asian nationalists decide, say, them don't want this prime minister, president, them have down there because he must sell out the place. to the same people them who the French have to, who the Asian them have to drive off of them land, which was the American and the French. And them come back, so you know, the Colorado come back in 80 the other day. Just the other day, you know, they come in and the French and the carry go there a couple of years ago. Now we see it come back again because them want to move the people them and say, these people is unruly, we have to carry in the army into Haiti to put down the gang war. There's no gang war that is happening because the people them demonstrate. Thousands of people when we look on the streets in Haiti, a march. The people them is not against the gang, according to them, I call it gang. The people are against the system that is trying to put the first liberated island and country of African people. They want to put them back hundreds of years back again, and the Asian people, they will have none of it. So we don't want to buy into this argument about gang war and the people them are this and that. That is what is happening if you don't angle the people them right, especially in Haiti. That is what we are saying.
Thank you very much, Muta. Dr. Jahlani, do you have some comments there?
Yeah, a lot of important things said, and I think the issue about the preparedness of our own population is the critical thing. The Jamaican National Council on Reparation was asked to look at the case for reparation, historical case. But one of the things that we realized as a committee is that we needed an internal reparation subcommittee, one that was focused on what we have not done. You know, in South Africa, we are given a sense that there was a truth and reconciliation process in the post-apartheid state. But nowhere in the post-independent Caribbean am I aware that we have had those processes. Perhaps Trinidad as the closest under Eric Williams. And by that, I'm saying he prepared the Trinidadian people in a developmental way where I'm having conversations about the importance of unity and nationalism and a range of things, nationalized state property, and became a strong Caribbean industrial power, so to speak, still is relative to Jamaica, if you take, for example. We have not had that process in this island, and I think people underrate Rastafari when we arrive at reparation. It's not that we have not repaired. It is because of our self-repair and psychological repair why we have become aware of a larger process that can be undertaken. And I think that is the central thing, that reparation really requires that retrofitting of self around a consciousness as to what colonialism is, what is white supremacy, how it manifests itself in the marketplace, in the media space, in the education place, and all of the various spaces. One of the things I think is a strength among Afro-Caribbean diasporas is their understanding in taking charge of education of their children as much as they can, private lessons and private schools and all of that. And what those schools need to do now is really become more embedded in a kind of philosophy that prepares their students for living in those spaces as activists and as persons who can strengthen a conversation based on their unique positions. So at the heart of it, I would agree that, you know, there is an entrenched understanding that we need to engage to empower people. Land is at the heart of it. But we're talking about sovereignty. We're talking about issues of power generally. And a place like Jamaica, in 60 years of independence, we're still battling whether we're mature enough to remove the Queen. You know, so so our leaders are perhaps the least informed or the least inclined to lead on these issues. So yeah, there's much work to be done. Give thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Jahlani. We have one question here, Laurie, before I hand over to you. Posing this to both the gentlemen. whoever prefers to tackle it first. Livingston asks, can you comment on religious beliefs in America? And can you comment on religious beliefs in Ethiopia? Can you connect political consciousness among Black leaders and leaders of Black majority countries? I can repeat if that seemed a bit convoluted.
It's an interesting query. I'm not in really a position to authoritatively comment about either spaces on religion, but I can say what I understand. There is a lot of heartland America that's very, very conservative in a very, what they would call Republican type of sentiment. And in those heartlands, I think Christianity is an important moral compass that we're seeing also affects debates such as abortion and even the political alignment around someone like Trump. I think cosmopolitan America is pretty much like any cosmopolitan space where there are multiple religious groups. In particular, I would remark that Santeria or Yoruba tradition comes a lot to Jamaica from the United States. It seems to be increasingly explored, especially among African American women. We have seen particularly. As far as Ethiopia is concerned, Ethiopia is Orthodox, Ethiopian Orthodox Christian state, largely at the state level. There's also a significant charismatic Christian encroachment coming, and there is a historical Muslim population. Places like Harar has strong Muslim, it's a predominantly Muslim city. But Christianity, I think, has been aligned to the Ethiopian throne and state power for, as long as Christianity has been in Ethiopia. I think both those countries use their religious populations in different ways. America doesn't necessarily mask itself as a Christian state, but that debate is very much important as to who becomes president and how those political issues are viewed. Where Ethiopia is concerned, the present prime minister actually is seen to blend a number of different concerns, including Muslim, Christian, and different ethnic groups. I'm not sure how he has used this in a religious sense, but I know the church is still quite strong in Ethiopia as a kind of ancient nobility and powerful space. I don't know if Muta, have some light to shed more.
I don't know if it's light. I don't know if it's a light I would shed more than a perception, that you say Ethiopia, according to what I read in the Bible, and according to what I hear Haile Selassie say. Haile Selassie say that Christianity reached Ethiopia when a man named Philip baptized the Ethiopian eunuch. And from that time, the Christian is in the hearts of most Ethiopians. The Islam are Muslims coming from across the other side of Asia there and come over, was very dominant in Ethiopia, even today. Well, I don't think we can no longer, I think we can no longer say that Ethiopia is a Christian society, even though its cultural expression into Ethiopians is Christianity, because Islam is now a driving force in the political, economical, and religious aspect of Ethiopian mindset. Even His Majesty, gave refuge to Ethiopia, sorry, to Islam, the Muslims at a time. And if we trace down the line, we'll find out, say, the woman who gave birth to Haile Selassie, she named Yeshima Bet Ali. Yeshima Bet Ali. Ali is not an Ethiopian word. The next thing is that there was a guy named where them put in exile before Haile Selassie there. Jahlani, the brethren ready to go up on the throne as a Muslim. Jahlani, Ligiasso, who was taken out of circulation because them claims say he was behaving too Muslim. So Islam and Christianity have a landward in Ethiopia. But when we examine Christianity, we realize a lot of the land in Ethiopia is run by the church, the lords, the kings. And one of the big fight against Haile Selassie was that he was taking the land away from the lords, because that is how you have lords and kings. Haile Selassie, the king of all the kings in Ethiopia. But these people control the land. And when you go to Ethiopia and look at the amount of land there and where the people them live, you realize that something is intrinsically wrong, not only with the social movement of the people, but also of the religious movement of the people. The people are colonized with this thing called Christian religion in Ethiopia. Because for hundreds of years until now, the Church of Ethiopia, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, is dealing with how much land them can acquire as land for the church. We see that with the Roman Catholic Church too. Them try to acquire land. That's why most of the school them is started out from by Roman Catholic, the Roman Catholic Church. I am not one of them Rasta who is going to say, because Ethiopia is a Christian society, I'm going to give credence to Ethiopian Orthodox Christianity. Because when I go to Ethiopia, I don't see the surplus of it. I know that people hold on upon it as a binding force. But I don't see, let's say, I hold on upon it as a binding force for Ethiopia, other than it is part of the tradition of Ethiopia to recognize that the church is the dominant, the Orthodox Church is the dominant religious community in Ethiopia. I say Haile Selassie go beyond that and make himself internationally known as a political leader. And even though in utter words of Christianity, because him is in a Christian country that deal with Christianity, him still recognize that, look here, there's something more than this church thing that him have to use to guide the people them. And one of the things how them get him out is because them feel say him that take away too much land from the church, that them have some little youth will rise up against him with them communist ideology, and then now say him have to go. Him have to go. So why we say that? We say that because there's nothing in the American Christian belief system that is not in the Ethiopian church system. Because it's the same system. It's just because we so sentimental about Ethiopia. Why would I hear most Rasta want to join the Ethiopian Orthodox Church? The Ethiopian Orthodox Church does not give credence to the Rastafari cultural expression in relationship to Emperor Haile Selassie I and what saying Emperor Haile Selassie I has done for the African people, not only in Jamaica, but all where in the Western world. So when we look on our role in this thing, we can't go look on Ethiopian Orthodox Church as the movement of Haile Selassie people or the American way of seeing things. Yes, we might share the same belief, for instance, the same thing when I'm talking about transgender, transsex, and bisexual, and what they call it, the thing where them have now the other day, where them start to instill in the people them. Where I say it is all and good, but most church, and not even the church, most African state relate to it same way. And most of these African states is not religious, but we have a common binding in culture. That is why I said to me, how we define ourselves culturally is more important than how we define ourselves religiously. Because religious bind you one way. Culture make you can accept the different aspect of the things that is internal in your space. So while we're in Jamaica now, and we hear about all Obia, and we hear in Italy talk about voodoo, and we hear Yoruba tradition, the Yorishas have come up big, and then we hear about Christian 7-day down there. So we must be able to recognize all of these things in the space, but understand, say, it's not that going to go freeway. It's not that going to go freeway. It's not the religion of one or the other. It's not Rasta who say them religious. It's not the religion going to free Rasta. It's them activism in the community and in the space of them there as it relates to how they manifest them cultural expression. Because all of the people them now get caught in a cultural expression that is not defined as culture. Even the educational system is bind with the religious system. So the politician and even them as a church and state don't mix, but in a Jamaica, the church and state mix. The church control the state manipulate the church. The politician, them enter them having prayer meeting, it's pure Christian go there. Enter them talk about, rise up to spiritual, this and spiritual, that. It's church. If you start telling them about voodoo, them say you're mad. Obia, you're mad, because them outlaw that already. And we use Obia and 380. A whole heap away. Never ever know. Taki was one of them Obia man where at the highest level. Nani. And when you talk about religious belief, now you have Sam Sharp, you have Paul Bogle. So all the while we have a certain what we call a spiritual awakening to certain things, because Paul Bogle and them man, they never just use the church. We go talk about Jesus. Them use the church as a symbol of where them activities are about. They mask it like the underground railway in America. The woman was not a religious person, even though she have religious, Christian mindset, but she have things. Most of the gospel songs were black people write in America. Have nothing to do with Jesus. It have something to do with them liberation. And them use the church as a stepping stone, as a gathering place, because them couldn't gather nowhere else. Them couldn't gather nowhere else, so them gather that. So, when I say that America, yeah, we can go and look at America. And we can go and look at religion in Ethiopia. But you say Rasta calculate certain things. And them calculate it through them cultural expression. The cultural expression of Rasta is the highest part of Rasta. It's not even the belief in the Haile Selassie. Because all the people who act up, as you can see, them adopt the culture. But when you start to tell them about Haile Selassie, it's like, well, but you ever know that, because Jesus Christ. It's not a religion. You have to see it as a liberation force. And the liberation force is Africa for Africans, those at home, and those abroad. So we must understand how important it is to know that this whole heap of religion is around us, but it's not the religion going to go freeway. Not the religion going to go freeway. All right.
Laurie, I'll let you make a few comments and round us off.
I cannot add or subtract to what has already been said because it is a tremendous amount of information and we need to process the truth in that, because I think there is so much, whether we look at religion and how that has pretty much taken over countries, it's taken over individuals, and it's still embedded today. Last week, one of the crucial parts to our conversation was a young girl who had watched her mother, her father, and pretty much all of her family be executed, is then taken into an orphanage that is run by Christian missionaries, and her name is replaced. So her traditional name she was given is now replaced by an English name. So now you have this young girl growing up with a name that is not a reflection of who she is. And the conversation we're having here is reinforcing the same information, that this is replicated across many countries, that people are terrorized, traumatized even, and that mindset. How do you challenge the very person who takes away your identity, tries to replace it with something else? I know when I was young, when we watched Roots, for example, the scene where Kunta Kinte is being beaten to change his name from Kunta Kinte to Toby, and he was resisting that. Even in that clip, it just shows the level of taking away of one's identity, our culture, which Mutabaruka, and as much as Dr. Jahlani has reinforced that, that is the true essence. Reparations is one thing, but the cultural identity is the most significant part, because if that is eroded, then what is left? I think there's another question that's posed. Takura, if you want to raise that, and then there's been some comments as well. I think I'll probably, if we start with the comments and then look at the question last, and then we can wrap up, because we could keep you here all night. The list of questions and discussion, it's definitely something that is needed in this moment. I don't know if you want to go into the comments, Takura. You're muted.
Apologies. Teresa said, how can we acquire land if the prices are so inflated it is out of reach for the average person with minimum wage and salaried, especially in the UK? People are locked in a cycle of materialism. Kirian then responded saying, yes, Teresa, the logic of unity is indisputable, but which future generation eventually gets to benefit? Benjamin goes on to comment, Africa is rich in resources, but foreign interests control these resources. That is part of the tragedy of our continent. And then I'll go to the question, which is from Javid Richardson. He asks, do the panelists think that the religion of Christianity has somewhat paralyzed the minds of our people? Since the Europeans modified and weaponized the Bible to control the majority of our people, how did those who have escaped this paralyzation / programming of the modified religion help our fellow brethren to realize what we need to do to escape the mental enslavement of our people?
Yeah, Javid kind of, he said the main, the crux of the challenge is the weaponizing of the Bible, as he has indicated. And more importantly, the engagement with the Bible has been trivial by most of the so-called experts. They've continued to reinforce the parts of the Bible that were shared with us to keep us docile and submissive. We've never been taught to be critical of the Bible, to handle it as a text that can really engender robust analysis and problem solving. And by that I'm saying, to answer his question as to what is the advice to persons who have, so to speak, made their journey into mental liberation to others who are not yet there, is to really be very much informed, which is to take a serious and keen interest in knowledge and knowledge production, But don't just embrace something because it's published as knowledge. You want to look into the politics of those publications, who is its author, and if there is something more insidious as a motivation for this. You also want to bring your instinct, your critical analysis. A student said to me recently, it's commonly said that, you know, Rasta people don't wash their locks. I said to her, I mean, come on now, you live in Jamaica and you would seriously consider that as something that could be truthful. So I'm suggesting that there is a basic logic that we have to engage in things that come in front of us. We need to listen to our inner voice when it tells us to question or to reject the things that seem to offend our understanding. And I think one of the good things that we have had within Jamaica, within the Rastafari space, and even through music, is that we have a vibrant engagement with ideas. That's what reasoning is. So the society, as much as they might not practice Rastafari philosophical teachings, are very much aware of Rastafari consciousness and own sensibilities as far as the things that can help them. And I think having that as a tool, whether it is through the surround sound that operates in Jamaica, having those things as a tool are increasingly making young people more critical. When I was growing up, going to church on a Sunday was a standard thing. By the time I got to the stage where I had my own children, you know, no one really sent their children to church in that same way that we felt as though it would be the devil if we stayed home, as much as the fact that our parents didn't go to church. Interestingly, that Muta mentions atheism in a few countries in his presentation, and I want to say that the largest single group in Jamaica in the last census was those Jamaicans who did not identify as having a religion, over 500,000 of those people in a population that's less than 3 million. So I think that that is a kind of achievement in the work that persons like Muta has done. Muta has been 30 years on the radio. You know, people are now quoting Muta and Bob Marley more than they're quoting, say, for example, Marcus Garvey. I'm not saying that Marcus needs to be replaced, but the accessibility through media and through the contemporary language that these persons offer provide the discerning youth with a critical tool. And interestingly, just to close up, it's not the academic or the educated people who are acquiring this understanding. You know, the average Jamaican youth thinks that he is Rastafari, especially if he is not a churchgoer and he's inclined to smoking herb and using Rastafari language and having Rastafari iconography. Many of them say they can't express the faith because of whatever circumstances. So I think that there is increasingly a critique of Christianity in the way that we've inherited it, and a real holding of ministers with shallow engagement on spirituality to task, you know, about the work that they're doing. Even an artist like Mr. Lexus had a period where he was visibly engaging the church about the messaging that they had. So Javid, my son, give thanks. Good to see you here. That's an excellent question, but I don't think it is as hopeless as much as the Bible is still used as a sword by many. I think increasingly people are open to engaging it critically.
Thank you for that response there, Dr. Jahlanni. Elder Muta, would you have any closing words or comments for our participants and for the world listening?
You know what I mean when I say closing words, you know, because the words them now close within the consciousness, you know, because what we really are trying is open the word them to the people them. You know, we want to open what we have been saying and what should be said to the masses of the people them. I mean, we have been doing that because I know the masses of the people them listen. It's not really some little highfalutin people them are listening, and we understand so it really a reach still. But we need one somebody, two somebody out of all the people them who recognize what them supposed to do. We need everybody to do what them supposed to do. You know, see, we need everyone, even your thing I know, is part of the liberation process too. Because who that know say this could have happened? I mean, I don't know where they live, but somewhere in Europe there, or somewhere in the Isles, the British Isles there, I do this. I will know say it gone past the Isles too. You understand? So all of this is part of the process. We need to do a whole heap of this, and we need to make sure say it gets to the people them. Since everybody have iPhone or iPad, and them still don't want to say I and I, even though everything depends I know. If I and I did not say I all the while, and everybody else say, what you talk when you never got to school? I know everything on iPhone, iPad, iTunes, I this and I said to see them now. Oh, me know you nobody have cuss the I them now. But when we did not say the I them, everybody cuss it. So what I say is that we who is I and I must recognize our ability to move this thing up. Like, oh, we have been doing it for years, because Leonard will come and say, that man over there said not our king. See our king over there, so. And we have to fight against white supremacy, colonialism, and neo-colonialism. Because the man is black, and he is the prime minister, our president, you must feel say, boy, right now, well, we have a black man a rule now. No. Because we see that in Africa now. It's the black people them in Africa mash up Africa terrible. The leaders them will go to France and Germany, I think, will study and go back to them country with the same little European ideas. And when it now work with the people, them just ease out some of the money and carry to Switzerland, carry go to Germany and go hold it on. And then they make the Chinaman them come in there and I do this thing them, and then the American them start to come again. And then the French them there. Nowadays we just see some of them are ease out the French now still. But the colonialism still exists, neo-colonialism in this part of the world still exists, and it's that we really must continue the struggle for. We talk about reparation. That is really what it is all about. The Israeli them still a search for Nazi criminals. After so much, them still a search for them. Them not stop. So much movies have been made about Nazi criminals and Hitler friend them and all that something there. And when we talk about that here, so we must forget it. We're not going to forget nothing. You know, see, until the thing is repaired and the damage is wiped away. We're not going to forget nothing. And we're going to tell we're bridging them and we're teaching them the same thing. We're not going to forget nothing. Something has to be done. And we're not talking about maybe, I may not see it, but I have to see it. I ain't ready yet. You know, see, I know, say, I have to go. Every man must dead. From your barn, you're going to dead. But I now go on along like saying, I don't want a piece of the pie, you know. My pie must be well soaked in some roots and all these things that I can eat it comfortable from my piece of land. And if I want to go out there and treat myself naked from my land, it's so. I don't want to go there, go rent land, rent out. Oh, Jamaican people that talk about rent house and say you own none. Rent house is what is rent house. A land we are talking about, land we are talking about. That is a liberation, land. You know, see. So, yeah, that's how it goes.
Give thanks, Muta. Give thanks, Dr. Jahlanni. Lori, any final words for us?
I cannot compete with what Mutabaruka just said there, where he wants to have his own piece of land and he can do whatever he wants to do on that piece of land. So
yeah, man, we want naked and walk up and down in our own little piece of land, man. Naked. Me and my wife and my people them must want to look at my cow them and my goat them and the birds and the flowers and the bees. And instead of now we just come out of our house and gone somewhere, so I'm not going to land. Or black people cannot look at it. They might build some little cubicles. And instead of them building by the land, they might go high up with it, you know. It's almost story. When we go to England to write it, I see some house, I can't turn my neck straight, so if we go to the top of the house, you know. And black people living at them place there. Black in America, the same thing. All black people feel comfortable in them little cubicle there. As you come out, you're in a walkway. Sometimes the elevator now work, you have to walk down this wine and road, step up, go down, and then reach out on the road. We're not used to that. That's enslavement. Enslavement. We want land over carrying up and down. In a yard. We know about yard. You see, right now, Jamaican people don't have no yard because they have built some them up. You know, some box, straight, 90 degrees box, and separate it. And then we must accept that. No, sir. Who wants? Meanwhile, they might take the land, you know. They might build the box, them gone up at the year, you know, we take a little piece of land. But you say, when you go to country, you say all of that, that is this list of land, that all of them, thousands of acres of land, where nobody know the pan. More than 2 little birds that fly up on the place. And if you see some manga, you jump over there. Them arrest you and lock you up. Just like how the governor general made the brother go to jail almost months a dozen hockey. And them could have never do eat hockey neither. That's the problem. So we are talking about land. We not stop talking about land. Land, Africa, and that them come and take away the land for African people and take away Africa. We the owners of the people we get enslavement outside our land. Them never take no other when the French, when the Niaah and this and that, when British them start to enslave one another, you know, them not take them out of the people them land and carry them going on the land. And we them take out of our land and carry go. We across the water. We across, you know much how we down and eat the water right now, ball. A whole heap of mother and father and pick everything and eat the water ball, so now. And we there go like we are idiot at talk about. I don't know, them things that go a long time. Go a long time. It happen right now. Most of it happening in our head. I will recognize it in our head. And that is really where we have to fight. We have to get that out our head to really come to an understanding of where Marcus Garvey and Kwame Nkrumah and you know, Steve Biko and all the man that talk about. That is where we have to get out of our head.
Well, I think with what you've just said, Mutabaruka, and Alexandra's last comment, this was worth more than money, time well invested. So that is so true. Thank you so much. So we look forward to having the new Land Redistribution Act being governed, I believe, by Mutabaruka and Dr. Jahlanni, shall we say?
Are you? Maybe you supposed to do that. Yeah.
Well, we will definitely put that in place because Teresa, Kieran, and Benjamin, they want to have this land redistribution done. It's important to have your own piece of property. And I think these are conversations our community needs to have about us having an understanding of wealth distribution, wealth continuation, so that it doesn't end with one generation, but we learn how to future-proof our money, how to be better established, and to take back what we so rightfully are really and truly well overdue. So we could start another conversation right here. So I'll
yeah, man, give thanks. Yeah, yeah man, give thanks, man. Give thanks for having us. Give thanks for having us. Yeah, man. We really appreciate you for really calling upon, you know.
Thank you.
All right.
Give thanks. Yeah, man.
Give thanks. We appreciate the efforts that the two gentlemen have made for us. We will be continuing this and other conversations with you too. As you know, I have briefed you on some of the work that Aksoni is doing with the National Museums of Northern Ireland with regards to decolonizing some of their exhibitions, as well as repatriation of many of the stolen goods from various parts of the world, including the Caribbean and Africa. So you and other academics within these fields are very important for us in order to help us to facilitate our remit with these institutions here in the United Kingdom. But we need your expertise and your experience, and we shall call on you again as our elders and our mentors and our guides in this chimurenga, this struggle.
Yeah, man. Give thanks, brother.
Give thanks, my brother. Give thanks.
Thank you so much.
Blessing. Yeah.
Yeah.